Say it, Larry, please. Say who made it this polarizing. I'm begging you to say it.
Well-crafted sentences. He went to Harvard. He spoke beautifully, but he had the same incendiary rhetoric that you accused Donald Trump of having.
What is your stance on abortion? They should have that baby? That's disgusting, man.
The baby should be killed? That's disgusting.
Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. In this video, we are going to be watching Michael Rapaport, who is that really annoying Homeland Security officer that kept trying to arrest Michael Schofield in Prison Break.
You're a and your mother was a and her mother and your father used to turn tricks at a gas station because he was too.
And then somehow he is even more annoying in real life with his Trump derangement syndrome, taking on the debate god Larry Elder. Now, Rapaport appears to have a podcast now. This is episode 1. This should be very interesting. And honestly, I can only give him props for having Larry Elder as the first guest, because most libs are terrified to be within 10 kilometers of Larry Elder. And now let's get into the first bit where Larry Elder drops some very important information about fatherlessness.
The #1 domestic issue facing America, by far, is the epidemic of fatherlessness.
Based on what?
70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. 25% of white kids now enter the world without a father in the home married to the mother. And the stats are clear. If you're raised without a father, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail.
Why is that a controversial statement? And I know you...
Name somebody who's mentioned it.
Well, your guy Ramaswamy.
Where do you think he got it?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? I've seen him many times in Iowa, many times in New Hampshire. He wasn't saying any of this until I started saying it.
So he stole your style.
Verbatim. He said epidemic of fatherlessness, which is what
Ramaswamy stole your style.
Ramaswamy stole my line. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Are you pissed off about that?
No, I'm happy that we're talking about it. I've talked about the epidemic of fatherlessness. And I've not heard any GOP leader say this. I heard Barack Obama once say it. He cited the same stats I gave you. And then Jesse Jackson told him he was talking down to black people, and he stopped saying it.
Why is that considered talk? Because I've heard you talk about it, and I agree with that. And I've heard you on Charlemagne, and I've heard you on the other one, Van Latham, and the girl. And it seems like when you bring this up to some people, and I don't like to generalize, when you bring this up to some people, when you bring this up to some black people, it's like you're smacking them in the face.
Right.
It's so offensive
to them,
as opposed to being something that like collectively should be looked at and be solved. And I don't understand that. I do.
I don't either. I think it's a number of things. I think it is perceived as somehow dissing the black females who are courageously raising these men and boys by themselves. I think that they don't want to acknowledge it because they would rather focus on what they consider to be systemic racism, and they feel this is sort of blaming the victim, and it's not. As you point out, you saw my first documentary. I mentioned in 1940, 87% of blacks lived under poverty. 1960, 20 years later, that number had fallen to 47%. 40-point drop in 20 years, the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion in history for black America. Even though 1940 still had the KKK, you still had Jim Crow, you didn't have Brown versus Board of Education yet. None of that stuff happened because it was rare for a black kid to be raised without a father in the home. Also, an embracement of Judeo-Christian values, a belief in entrepreneurship. Fast forward, Uncle Tom, too, talks about what happened to the civil rights movement after it had gone from demanding equal rights to demanding equal results, and people like Black Lives Matter began to lead the charge. On their website, they attacked the nuclear family. The co-founders are trained Marxists. Marx was an atheist who didn't believe in God and didn't believe in entrepreneurship. So everything that made black people survive and thrive and grow after slavery is now under attack by the left.
So we have to give Larry Elder all the credit here because he has been one of the main, if not the main voice in sounding the alarm about the epidemic of fatherlessness and the breakdown of the home. And this is actually one of those issues that just doesn't get talked about enough. And it often slips people's mind, but it's arguably one of the most important problems. And also, it's the root of many of the more surface level problems that we hear about. And I want to point you guys to a website called the National Fatherhood Initiative. If this is something that you guys would like to research into a bit more and see just how deep it goes, I'll leave that link below. But here's one graphic to highlight the magnitude of the issue. The father absence crisis in America: 17.8 million children, nearly 1 in 4 without a biological step or adopted father. Research shows when a child is raised in a father absent home, they are affected in the following ways: greater risk of poverty, more likely to have behavioral problems, greater risk of infant mortality, more likely to go to prison, more likely to commit crime, more likely to become pregnant as a teen, more likely to face abuse and neglect, more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, more likely to suffer obesity, and more likely to drop out of school. And this doesn't really make the news because wouldn't get good ratings, and also the government subsidizes it through welfare. So it's lucky we have people like Larry Elder shining a light on this issue. And meanwhile, let's check in with the Democrats in the White House and see what big issues they are tackling. Just this morning, I was checking Ground News as part of my morning routine, and I found this story. White House video caption slip up dubs Kamala Harris Madam President during Queer Eye cast meeting. And for those of you who haven't signed up yet, Ground News is an independent startup that does the hard work for you by bringing together tens of thousands of sources all in one place and allows you to get a comprehensive view on every breaking story from across the news spectrum. They have features such as the bias distribution. You can see down here that 100% of the sources lean right for this story. Surprise, surprise. You can also see ownership. They've got 38% of the sources from independent news and many more amazing features. So all you guys need to do is scan the QR code on screen here or go to ground.news/rattlesnake. That is ground.news/rattlesnake. And for the Rattlesnake TV listeners, Ground News are offering 40% off of the Vantage plan, which is what I use. So make sure that you check out this trusted source if you want to have your news diet keeping you armed and dangerous. Let's get back into the video.
To me, you know what? Why I named this show Pick a Side. I know you said you had a show, one of your many radio shows called Pick a Side. For me, the lack of gray area is really the big problem in politics. And I'm no expert of politics, but the fact that it's the LA Dodgers, the New York Yankees. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And
I've never seen it this polarized.
You know who did it? You know who did it?
I know.
You know who did it, Larry.
I know.
Before I say it,
I know what you're going to say.
You say it. You say who.
You're wrong.
No. Who made it this polarizing? Say it, Larry, please. Say who made it this polarizing. I'm begging you to say it. I am begging you to say it. I am begging you to say the guy who made it this polarizing.
I think that Donald Trump angered a lot of people, including the media. I'll tell you why.
He made it this polarizing. He took it to like steroid Barry Bonds level.
They should look in the mirror. When Donald Trump first decided to run, he was on CNN, he was on MSNBC, which is what I call it, all the time. Why? They thought of him as a joke, but every time he was there, the numbers went up. So he starts picking off these candidates one after another, and they realize, holy bleep, I did it again. We created a monster. And so they went after him with a ferocity that I've never seen before because they know they helped to create him. Donald Trump was called a Nazi. There's a guy in...
I don't like anyone using that term Nazi.
As well you shouldn't. As well, nobody should.
You got to earn that term.
Nobody should. Donald Trump was called a fascist.
Guys, if you have not liked this video yet, then I would encourage you to scroll your mouse down or your finger, whatever the kids are using these days to like videos, and you help a brother out, get me in the algorithms. And also, if you like it here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Back to it.
As far as making it polarizing and who's made it, taking it to another level, Trump, and you're a chill dude, you're a well-spoken dude. When I think of a conservative person who presents himself like a conservative, you are absolutely somebody I would say, who presents himself that way. Trump got elected iconically at his debates, why he became the people's champ, lying Ted Cruz, this one's names, that one names. That seems so opposite to the type of behavior that you represent from yourself. Why and how can you support a guy who also, I also heard you say that when it comes to debates, you're not at the debates. You don't like everybody shooting each other down, and then because it's not good for the party, and you don't like that. People like Gavin Newsom. Well, then again, use it against you. But Trump got elected not shooting, fucking publicly lynching giving nicknames, sexualized hands, all the bullshit that he did, and I know you don't curse, how can you support this guy?
I'm watching the Golf Channel. I'm not a golfer, but
Give it to me straight. Don't give me about the golf. You're gonna
I'm watching the Golf Channel.
Don't Tiger Woods me here like a Jack Nicholson me.
And I love the sport, although I don't play it.
Okay.
And
I'm following you. You're not gonna
stay with me. This is going to make a lot of sense to you. These two professional golfers were being interviewed, and the host said, "What makes a good golfer?" And one of them went through this beautiful, elaborate description of what makes a good golfer: where you put your hands, where your shoulders are, where your legs are, where your eyes are. And the other one went like this. I look to see where the ball lands. Mm-hmm. I like where the ball lands on immigration, on abortion, on judges, on taxes, on losing the regulations, on reversing the war against oil and gas, on standing up to China. That's what I like. The rest of it is white noise, pardon the expression.
But is it white noise, Larry?
To me it is.
All right, to you it is.
Look at the BS Joe Biden does.
I want to stay. We'll get to Joe. We'll get to smoking Joe Biden. We'll get to cadaver Joe Biden. I'm not one of these people. I vote for Larry. I am not one of these people. And the only time that people pay attention to me with politics is when I go at Trump. I go at all of them. All of them.
Well, we need to do it now.
But let's stay on your guy Trump.
This is about Trump.
Okay.
Obama. I'm in Boston 2000.
This is about Trump, Obama.
I will connect the dots.
Okay, connect them good. The golf was good.
The beautiful thing about the podcast is I get time to develop a thought.
100%.
Who made everything so polarizing? Well, that's a very easy question to answer. The media. It's really that simple. I mean, for years, they put aside the interests of the country and the people to just go off on Donald Trump and create propaganda and smear campaigns against him. They called him stupid, racist, misogynistic, xenophobic, treasonous even with the Russia collusion narrative, and they made vast swathes of the population fearful that he was going to get into office and start a nuclear war because he was such a maniac, or he was going to become a dictator and just never relinquish power.
Shock and tears. This is how the world reacted to Donald Trump becoming the new US president.
What we did was the Democratic equivalent of installing an above-ground pool. Even if we're lucky and it doesn't seep into our foundations, the neighbors will never look at us the same way again.
We put our 8-month-old son to bed, and I was holding him, and I said to him, when you wake up tomorrow morning, we might have our first female president. And then when we came home around midnight, I went into his room, shook his crib until he woke up, and screamed, "We have to get out of here!"
Why? Because he is the greatest threat to the establishment, to the deep state, and to the swamp that the United States has seen since JFK. And we know what happened to him. And in terms of the debate tactics that they talked about here, I mean, I think it's all well and good to engage in civil debate, as these two are actually doing here. Have respect, have a bit of a laugh, have a few disagreements. But when it comes to the political debates and when it comes to the candidate debates, that is a different beast. Trump won those debates by using all of the hilarious nicknames, Lion Ted.
What's your name? My name's Lion Ted Cruz.
Why do you lie?
Donald,
why do you
adults
lie?
learn not to interrupt each other.
Why do you lie?
Donald.
Crooked Hillary.
Commonly referred to as Crooked Hillary.
Little Marco.
Little Marco, Little Marco.
I think another one was Low Energy Jeb.
She has less energy than Jeb Bush. Admit it.
Low energy. Classic. And he did what he needed to do, and the swamp creatures just had no answer for it. They all started to just malfunction because it was so far out of the rules of the conventional game. And definitely, let's have a little bit of a flashback here. The best moment was when he big bro'd Jeb Bush.
This is a tough business to run for president.
I know. You're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is
real tough.
You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see. I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better. You know, you started off over here, Jeb. You're moving over further and further. Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
This doesn't do
Ever ready. It's very high energy, Donald. Mr. Trump?
Humble.
That's a good one.
It was just a true stroke of genius, and I wish we could see it again this cycle, but I'm not so confident we will. On to the next bit about Obama.
I'm in Boston 2004, and this guy comes up, funny guy, skinny guy with funny little ears named Barack Obama, and he's introducing John Kerry. And he says, there's no blue America, there's no red America, there's just one United States of America. Everybody goes nuts. There's no black America, there's no white America, there's just one America. Everybody goes nuts. I turned to my producer and I said, this guy's not saying anything. It's just fancy, pretty rhetoric. Anybody can give that speech, but he gave it well. He's probably going to run for president someday. Obama announces president, and he's on 60 Minutes with Steve Croft. And Steve Croft says, he wasn't the front runner yet, he's catching up to Hillary, that's why they had him on. And Steve Croft says, Senator, if you don't win, will it be because of racism? I'm at home by myself. I said, let's see how this man answers the question. Is he going to give a victocrat answer? That's a word I coined. I get 10% if you use it, victocrat.
What does it mean?
Somebody that blames everybody else for their problems.
Okay.
Professional victim, victocrat.
Victocrat. I like that word.
Thank you. Booyah. 10%. Write that down. Elder 10%.
That's going to be the name of my next book.
Acknowledge it. We got
Victocrat by Michael Rapaport. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is he going to give a victocrat answer the way Sharpton would, who ran for president, and then blame it on racism, and Jesse Jackson ran twice and blamed his loss on racism, or is he going to tell the truth? And to his credit, he said, no. If I don't win, it will be because I have failed to articulate a vision that the American people can embrace. I went, wow. Senator Obama at a black church is talking about how much racism there is in America. This is when he's running. And he said, the Moses generation, referring to Martin Luther King, has gotten us 90% of the way there. My generation, he said, the Joshua generation, has to get us an additional 10%. Now, there was a Fox News poll, 2002, 8% of Americans believe it is possible that Elvis is still alive. So in that 10%, you got that 8%. So frankly, we're about as good as you can get, just about. And I like the number.
Some people believe that JFK Jr. is still alive. And they're very prominent at your guys' rallies.
And I like the number that he gave. We're 90% of the way there. When he walked into the Oval Office the third week of January 2009, I know this is a long way of answering your question, he was at 70% approval.
Barack.
Yeah.
Yes.
He got elected with 53%. How do you get to 70% when you haven't done anything? The answer is a bunch of people who still don't want their taxes raised, as he promised to do, who don't want Obamacare, as he promised to do, said, at the very least, he will bring us together racially. So both blacks and whites thought that race relations would improve. When he left, both blacks and whites thought race relations got worse. Why? 8 years. The Cambridge police acted stupidly. If I had a son, he looked like Trayvon. Racism is in our DNA. He embraced Black Lives Matter, had Al Sharpton in the White House over 70 times. He had an AG, Attorney General Eric Holder, who said voter ID was pernicious racism. He played the race card over and over and over to the point where here in New York, his last term, officers Liu and Ramos were shot sitting in their car by a black guy who was pissed off because of the Black Lives Matter narrative that the police were engaging in systemic racism against black people. The stats, by the way, do not show that whatsoever. Baton Rouge, three officers killed execution style by another black man. He also told on social media, told friends, he did it because of systemic racism by the police. 5 officers killed execution style in Dallas. Another different black guy. 3 different black men.
These are lunatics, though.
All motivated by the same rhetoric.
Right.
That Obama embraced. The Black Lives Matter BS that Obama embraced. My point is, Obama made things worse racially, not better, worse. He did the opposite of what American people thought he was going to do when they hired him. So while Donald Trump gets a whole lot of grief for stuff he said, Obama gets nothing because he did well-crafted sentences, he went to Harvard, he spoke beautifully, but he had the same incendiary rhetoric that you accused Donald Trump of having, except you didn't think it was going to come from him.
So Larry is totally right about Obama. He is not this darling liberal that they paint him to be. Obama made race relations so much worse, and he was the precursor to these race riots that we have seen over the past few years, and he was the precursor or the catalyst for groups like BLM. He's like the ultimate race hustler. He got into office having tens of millions of white people voting for him. People who wanted to see unity in the country, and they wanted to see a giant step forward in terms of race relations. But then when he got in, all he did was cause racial tension. He's on the record saying that America has never gotten over the legacy of slavery. The legacy of Jim Crow and racism is still very much alive, Exactly the opposite of what you'd want to hear from him. How much better would it have been if he came and downplayed racial tensions? And if he came out and celebrated all of the progress that's happened, or even better yet, if he just never mentioned it? If he did everything he could to just not make it a factor and try and let it fizzle out, that would have been a classy move. But no, and now here we are, talking about it every 2 seconds. And now onto the last bit about abortion and who Larry thinks is going to be president.
What is your stance on abortion? Give me your take on abortion.
Abortion is wrong.
Top to bottom.
Top to bottom.
Come on, Larry.
Wrong.
But how could you say that fatherlessness is such an issue, but abortion is wrong? If a teenager gets somebody pregnant, I want to hear you. Teenager gets somebody pregnant, they don't want to have a baby.
Adoption.
Come on, man.
Adoption.
Or God forbid somebody is.
35 couples for every one kid available to be adopted.
God forbid somebody is and impregnated.
Can't get pregnant.
God forbid somebody's impregnated. Someone in your world, someone in a friend's world, a family member. They should have that baby. That's disgusting, man.
The baby should be killed. That's disgusting.
This is not a baby. 2 months, 3 months.
It's still an innocent life. And there are, it'd be one thing if the pro-life side was not talking the talk and walking the walk, but there are thousands of pregnancy centers, sometimes called crisis centers. There are resources, adoption resources, money for housing. Money
How could you give birth to a baby that if you're that you should not have to give birth to a baby if you're come on, man. How could you give birth if you're and then you have to give birth to it and put it up for adoption?
It's horrible. It's an awful thing, but I still believe that it's an innocent life.
Can I ask you a personal question? Have you ever participated in adoption? I mean, have you ever participated in abortion?
No.
I just think that we as men and in general, women should have the right, especially, I think there should be limitations and rules and regulations.
I don't believe that there should be a federal law, one way or the other. I'm not in favor of what Lindsey Graham wanted to do. I've always argued that Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided. It should be a matter state by state. I'm in California. California is a deep blue state. When I ran for governor, the so-called Texas fetal heartbeat bill came up, and I was asked about that. And I said, I'm in California. What's going to happen with abortion in California? We have supermajorities of Democrats in the Senate and in the Assembly, as I point out in my book. This is a pro-abortion state. There'll be no bill on my desk, put on my desk for me to sign. There were a couple of measures in the last few years in California for parental notifications and for waiting limits, and I voted for them, and they were overwhelmingly defeated. So I live in a blue state.
Okay.
And we live in a federalist society, and issues like abortion, doctor-assisted suicide, drugs, legalization, all these should be state-by-state issues, and abortion should be one as well.
My final question, I could continue talking to me, but you got to go. Based on everything you know, all your experience, all your thoughts, all your data, all your references, who do you predict will be the president in 2024?
Donald Trump.
Wow.
Donald Trump's going to get the nomination, very likely. And it isn't because Donald Trump is so popular, it's because Joe Biden is so unpopular. 2/3 of people believe that our economy is going in the wrong direction. Only now are people really realizing how bad the borders are. People paying 40% more for gasoline. They care about the economy. And it's going to come down to the economy. And if RFK Jr. gets in, he's going to siphon even more votes away from the Democratic Party.
He ain't getting in, man. The RFK Jr. ain't getting anywhere, man. No disrespect, and I know he's got some kind of health issue. But you can't be president if you can't talk. He drones on. He's like
reportedly he may run as an independent.
He ain't getting it. And if you have a better chance of RFK.
And if he does, he'll suck enough votes away from Joe Biden to make it even easier for Donald Trump to win.
Right. Do you think he's a plan?
And I thought you were going to ask me who's going to be on the other side. This, to me, is an even more interesting question.
What do you mean?
Is Biden going to be the nominee? If Biden cannot fog up a mirror, I believe it's going to be Kamala Harris for all the reasons I mentioned. They painted themselves into a corner now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So if he runs against Kamala Harris, she's even less popular than Joe Biden.
So this is what often happens in an unproductive debate between a pro-abortion individual and a pro-life individual. The pro-abortion people will pull out this argument saying, well, what if this woman gets raped? That's so disgusting that you would make her bring this baby to term, and you're evil and you're a monster, etc., etc. And this is a cheap and honestly useless tactic for a number of reasons. First of all, because the people who are pro-lifers, like myself, generally Christians, tend to believe that what is inside of the mother's womb is a life. It's a child, and it is a child from the moment of conception. And the science emphatically backs this up, that life begins at conception. And so with that logic, if this is a life, then just like any other life, it is worthy of protection from being murdered. So with our logic, we could easily turn around for anybody arguing for any form of abortion whatsoever and say you are an evil, sadistic monster and you are arguing to murder little children. We could do that, but generally we tend not to, because that's not really the way that you go about a civil debate. And secondly, I think it's just stupid, because do you think that Michael Rapaport would argue against a woman having an abortion at 3 months, for example, because she's having financial hardship? I don't think he would argue against that. I think he would be all for that. So there's no point in arguing from completely different ends of the political spectrum or of the spectrum of this debate, because you'll just be talking past each other the whole time. The best thing to do is for Larry Elder to establish where Michael Rapaport sits in his limits for abortion. Is it 8 months? Is it 9 months? Does he have any limits at all? And also get some definitions going as to what Michael Rapaport thinks that the unborn is. But anyways, guys, in summary, I would actually say that I appreciate Michael Rapaport having this debate and having Larry Elder on his show, because like I said before, a lot of the libs are terrified of the stat repository Larry Elder. They won't have him on their show. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing who else he has on his show. And Mr. Rapaport, if you do watch this and if you want a guest on your show, next time I'm in the United States, let's have at it. And with that, guys, as per usual, you can find the links below. You can subscribe to the channel right here. And if you'd like to watch another one, right here. Till next time, I'm Jake. This is RattlesnakeTV, keeping you armed and dangerous.